Hello and welcome to Indus News Live from Islamabad. I'm Hira Mustafa and these are the headlines. The nation is celebrating Pakistan Day today with renewed commitment to work hard for the progress and stability of the country. The day dawned with a 31-gun salute in the federal capital and a 21-gun salute in provincial capitals. On this day in 1940, Muslims of the subcontinent passed the historic Lahore Resolution, which led to the creation of Pakistan. A change of guard ceremony was held at the mausoleum of the inceptor of the ideology of Pakistan, Allama Iqbal in Lahore. In their messages, President Dr. Arif Alvi and Prime Minister Imran Khan expressed solidarity with the oppressed people of Indian-occupied Kashmir. US President Joe Biden has expressed his resolve to strengthen partnership with Pakistan. In a letter, Biden facilitated President Arif Alvi and the entire nation on Pakistan Day. Biden said Washington will continue to cooperate with Islamabad for the establishment of peace in Afghanistan. Earlier, in a phone call with Pakistan Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa, US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin lauded Pakistan's continued support for the Afghan peace process. In the US, 10 people, including a police officer, have been killed in a shooting at a supermarket in Boulder City, a western Colorado state. Police say they have arrested a suspected gunman who got injured in the encounter. The bloodshed marks the second mass shooting in the US in a week, following gun violence in Atlanta that left 8 people dead. Israelis are voting in the fourth general elections in 2 years after the ruling coalition collapsed in December. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu faces a tough vote, being embroiled in several corruption trials. Meanwhile, the personal information of all voters was leaked by anonymous hackers a day before the elections. In Brazil, over 1,300 more people have died from coronavirus overnight, raising the death toll over 295,000. In Pakistan, 72 people lost their lives to the virus, while nearly 3,300 tested positive overnight. Globally, the virus has claimed 2.7 million lives and infected 123 million people. And in the National Basketball Association, Utah Jazz have dominated the Chicago Bulls 95-120. Donovan Mitchell scored 30 points with 6 rebounds and 6 assists to lead Jazz to victory. In another encounter, Houston Rockets beat Toronto Raptors 170-99. Well, these were the headlines. News in detail coming after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now the news in detail. The nation is celebrating Pakistan Day today with renewed commitment to work hard for the progress and stability of the country. On this day in 1940, Muslims of the subcontinent passed the historic Lahore Resolution, which led to the creation of Pakistan.
The day dawned with a 31-gun salute in the federal capital and a 21-gun salute in provincial capitals. A change of guard ceremony was held at the mausoleum of the inceptor of the ideology of Pakistan, Allama Iqbal, in Lahore. In their messages, President Dr. Arif Alvi urged the nation to remember the Kashmiris who are being subjected to the worst form of repression and state-sponsored terrorism. Prime Minister Imran Khan also expressed solidarity with the innocent people of Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Pakistan's embassies around the world are also celebrating Pakistan's National Day. Ankara's landmark buildings decorated with Pakistan's national flag. However, due to downpours in the capital city of Islamabad, the Pakistan Day parade has been postponed until Thursday. Later in the afternoon, President Alvi will confer awards to people from different fields of lives for their outstanding contributions.
U.S. President Joe Biden has expressed his resolve to boost partnership with Pakistan. In a letter, Biden congratulated President Arif Alvi and the nation on Pakistan Day. The U.S. president asserted that the ties with Pakistan are based on the shared goal of peace and prosperity. Biden said Washington will continue to work with Islamabad on Afghan peace, climate change and COVID-19. Earlier, during a phone call with Pakistan's Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin lauded Islamabad's consistent support to the peace process. The U.S. Secretary of Defense also expressed Washington's desire to further cooperation with Pakistan in areas of common interest. In the U.S., 10 people, including a police officer, have been killed in a shooting at a supermarket in Boulder City, western Colorado state. Police say they have arrested a suspected gunman who got injured in the encounter. They said the motive behind the shooting is not known immediately. Police identified the slain officer as 51-year-old Eric Talley, saying he was the first to respond to the shooting. Talking to the media, Boulder Police Commander Kerry Yamaguchi said there is no ongoing public threat.
I can share with the public today, or this evening, that there is no ongoing public threat, that we do have a person of interest in custody. That person was injured during the incident and is being treated for the injuries.
The bloodshed marks a second mass shooting in the U.S. in a week, following gun violence in Atlanta that left 8 people dead. And now moving on, China says no one can interfere in its internal affairs by fabricating lies. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi's statement comes after a meeting with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov in Gilan. The two said the international community believes the U.S. should reflect on the damage it has done to global peace in recent years. The Chinese state councillor said manipulation by a few Western powers does not represent the international community. During a joint press conference, Wang called for enhanced cooperation with Russia to meet global challenges. Meanwhile, Lavrov termed European and Western sanctions unacceptable. He said Russia and China believe the U.S. is trying to destroy international legal architecture. Several Western countries have announced curbs on Chinese officials in Beijing over alleged human rights abuses in Xinjiang. The move comes shortly after China responded with its own sanctions on European officials. The European Union, the UK, Canada and the US announced the sanctions as a coordinated efforts. British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab said the measures are part of intensive diplomacy. The U.S. Secretary of State said a united transatlantic response sends a strong signal to those who violate human rights. In a statement, Antony Blinken said the nations will take further actions in coordination with like-minded partners. Meanwhile, Beijing denounced the EU sanctions, saying they are based on lies and disinformation. The international community has welcomed a new peace initiative from Saudi Arabia to end the war in Yemen. The Saudi initiative includes a nationwide ceasefire under the UN supervision and the reopening of air and sea links. Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud says, under the plan, political negotiations between the Yemeni government and the Houthis will be restarted. In a news conference, he said Riyadh will work with the international community to press the rebels to come to the negotiating table. Prince Faisal said the Saudi-led coalition will continue to face Houthi assaults with a necessary response. Yemen's internationally recognized government issued a statement welcoming the offer. British Foreign Minister Dominic Raab said a nationwide ceasefire and action to ease humanitarian access restriction are essential. Welcoming Saudi offer, the U.S. State Department said all parties to the Yemen conflict should commit seriously to an immediate ceasefire. The United Nations and Pakistan also lauded Saudi Arabia's effort to end Yemeni war. but Houthis said there is nothing new in the offer. However, the group's chief negotiator said the Houthis will continue to talk with Riyadh, Muscat and Washington to try to reach a peace deal. Israelis are voting in the fourth general elections in 2 years after the ruling coalition collapsed in December. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu faces a tough vote, being embroiled in several corruption trials. Election officials say vote counting will likely take several days due to coronavirus precautions and the upcoming Passover holiday. They warn the delay could be fertile ground for growing efforts to delegitimize the results. Meanwhile, the personal information of all voters was leaked by anonymous hackers a day before the elections. Israeli media said hackers published databases with 6.5 million names, addresses, and ID numbers. Palestine's Fatah movement says Israel is pressurizing President Mahmoud Abbas to cancel this year's elections. Fatah's Central Committee member Hussein al-Sheikh said Israel's Internal Security Service chief called for canceling the polls. But al-Sheikh said Palestinians will move forward with the polls at any cost. Earlier, Israeli media said Tel Aviv conveyed a strong warning to Abbas over Hamas-Fatah unity in upcoming polls. Palestinians are set to elect a new legislator on May 22nd and a president on July 31st after a gap of 15 years. In Brazil, over 1,300 more people have died from coronavirus overnight, raising the death toll to over 295,000. Globally, the virus has claimed over 2.7 million lives and infected more than 123 million people. WHO expert Van Kerkhove says the weekly global count of deaths from COVID-19 is rising again after about 6 weeks of declines. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has warned the U.S. could see another avoidable surge if mitigation measures are not followed. Germany has also extended current lockdown to April 18th, entering stricter curbs over the Easter holiday period. Turkey recorded its highest daily coronavirus cases since mid-December. In Asia, South Korea's President Moon Jae-in received a shot of AstraZeneca's vaccine as the country began to accelerate its inoculation drive. In Pakistan, 72 more people have lost their lives to the coronavirus and more than 3,200 tested positive overnight. The health ministry says the countrywide death toll is now approaching 14,000. So far, over 633,000 people have been infected in the country, of which more than 585,000 people have recovered. The ministry has detected over 34,500 active cases in the country. Meanwhile, nearly 2,500 people are in critical condition across the country. More news stories coming up after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Niger, the death toll from coordinated raids on southwestern villages has risen to 137. Officials say the gunmen attacked 3 villages located near the border with Mali, shooting at everything that moved. A previous estimate by local authorities was of around 60. The government said by systematically targeting civilians, these armed bandits are reaching a new level of horror and savagery. In a statement, the government announced 3 days of national mourning, but it did not say who authorities believed was behind the attacks. Earlier, UN's refugee agency said the attacks can be a revenge for the recent arrest of people suspected of having links with armed groups. Lebanon's president and Prime Minister-designate Saad al-Hariri have failed to reach an agreement on a new cabinet. Following their meeting, Hariri said Michel Aoun wanted to dictate cabinet membership. In a televised address, Hariri said the president insisted on granting veto powers on policy to his political allies. He said the president sent a list for a cabinet of either 18, 20 or 22 ministers with names to be filled in. Hariri called Aoun's demands unacceptable, saying it is not the job of the president to form a government. Responding, Aoun said he is surprised by Prime Minister-designate's comments as his proposal had not included a blocking minority. Lebanon has been without a government since August, and the economic crisis is posing the biggest threat to its stability. Moscow says it is ready for tit-for-tat measures after Bulgaria expelled 2 Russian diplomats, accusing them of espionage. The Russian embassy in Sofia said Moscow will reserve its right to retaliate. In a statement, the embassy called the expulsion groundless and unjustified. It said the demarche of Sofia will not contribute to the further construction of a constructive Russian-Bulgarian dialogue. Earlier, Bulgaria's foreign ministry said it had given Russian diplomats 72 hours to leave the country. The move followed a letter from prosecutors that said the 2 had been involved in activities incompatible with their status. Sofia has now expelled 8 Russian diplomats, including a military attaché over suspected spying since October 2019. A dedicated Lego collector in Vietnam has crafted entire worlds out of the small, multicolored bricks. More in this report.
Huang Dang steps into his Lego project room, filled to the brim with drawers full of tiny bricks, and slowly but surely starts to construct a Vietnamese fishing boat. Huang says he is most inspired by scenes close to home, his childhood home, a temple in Hanoi's old quarter, or a 1990s Vietnamese living room during Lunar New Year.
I categorize the bricks according to their functionality. For example, there are bricks used especially to build walls, some are for details, so they are sorted by what they can build. It is tough to tell how many bricks are in those boxes, but my best guess is that this is half of the 2 million something bricks that I own. The other million are still mixed up in boxes.
Huang said he hopes to eventually build 10 large-scale creations for an exhibition and is currently about halfway to his goal. He said it takes about 5 months to finish a 5,000-piece facade, although he admits most of that time is spent sourcing the perfect brick.
I have to admit that 95% of the time spent is to find bricks. I do have them here, I just don't know where. They are mixed up in boxes that take up a lot of time to find. I often spend a whole evening looking for just that one brick.
Despite his massive collection, Huang said he is always on the hunt for new pieces, and that is how he made what he calls his Lego friends, including Hang Huing in Ho Chi Minh City. The pair met over a Facebook group for builders and collectors.
Paintings by Edvard Munch, silverware by Pablo Picasso, and a Banksy canvas are among the works on offer at an upcoming Sotheby's auction. The London auction house will hold its first major sale of the year, titled Modern Renaissance, on 25th of March. The auction will span 500 years of art. Munch's Embrace on the Beach leads the lots with a price estimate of $12.5 to $16.6 million. A self-portrait of the Norwegian painter is priced at $6.2 to $8.9 million. Picasso's portrait of photographer Dora Maar is expected to fetch $8.9 to $11.7 million, while a set of silver plates by the Spanish artist has a price tag of $1.6 to $1.4 million. David Hockney's 4-meter-wide landscape, Tall Dutch Trees After Hobbema, is seen fetching between $8.9 and $11.7 million. Other artworks on offer include Portrait of a Youth by 15th century painter Piero del Pollaiuolo with an estimate of $5.5 to $8.3 million. Elusive street artist Banksy's parody canvas of a 1991 Vanity Fair cover of actress Demi Moore is on sale at $2.7 to $4.1 million. Filmmaker Elizabeth Lowe has chosen 3 abandoned dogs to be the subject of her new documentary called Stray. The documentary will depict the daily life in Istanbul through the eyes of 3 dogs that roam in streets, searching for the food. This report has the details.
Dogs are considered as the loyal and best friends of humans. Therefore, it is understandable that Lou has decided to take his friendship to the next level. The movie star's Zeytin likes to walk through the streets of Istanbul at night. Nazar easily befriends strangers, while Carter lives a construction site in the bustling Turkish city. Lou says she found Zeytin in a tunnel where she saw her running after a group of young Syrian refugees.
It started out from a very personal place. I had a childhood dog growing up who passed away, who I loved a lot. And I remember at the time feeling like I needed to suppress my grief at his passing because he wasn't a human family member. And that really led me to question sort of the role that this species hierarchy that we exist in has, and what value means and what sentience means when I could perceive the depth of his being.
Hong Kong-born director traveled to Turkey, fascinated by a 2004 law that protects stray animals from cruelty and dictates they receive good treatment. Lou says the documentary is inspired by her grief for her childhood dog.
And I remember when I landed in Turkey and went to Istanbul and saw the way the dogs were living, where it felt like they were communally cared for and they could have these transitory friendships with all the people who were around them. I was really amazed by that because it was a concept, a way of relating to dogs and other species that was completely foreign to me. And I wanted to document that and capture that for the rest of the world to see, to sort of ask us to reconsider our relationships with other species, and in particular dogs.
Stray will be released digitally on the 26th of March, with special previews held in the United Kingdom to mark the National Puppy Day.
Stocks in the Asia-Pacific have retreated, weighed down mostly by Chinese markets. Investors now await a closely watched congressional appearance by U.S. Federal Reserve Chair and Treasury Secretary later in the day. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index is leading losses, diving close to 1.5%. Mainland Chinese shares and Seoul's Kospi have also lost nearly 1%. The Nikkei 225 in Japan has slid nearly 0.5%, while Australia's ASX 200 has slipped fractionally. In the National Basketball Association, Utah Jazz have dominated the Chicago Bulls 95-120. Donovan Mitchell scored 30 points with 6 rebounds and 6 assists to lead Jazz to victory. Rudy Gobert nailed a double-double for Jazz with 21 points, 10 rebounds, and a career-high 9 blocked shots. In another encounter, Houston Rockets beat Toronto Raptors 117-99. Christian Wood scored 19 points, while John Wall produced a triple-double as the Rockets snapped their record 20-game losing streak. Now it's time to have a look at the weather update across the globe. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.